All right. Welcome, everyone, to Heart of Entrepreneurship. Happy New Year. I think this is the first episode we've done this year. Yeah.
Happy New Year.
It's good to see you. I like the curly hair.
Thank you.
My beard's a
Goes
bit
with the beard.
white. Yeah.
Yeah, we're aging.
Um, so we had a nice holiday. How was your holiday? Was it good?
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, good mix of time with friends and family and skiing and playing and cozy times inside.
Yeah. I'm starting to really appreciate as the kids get older, like that is really sacred time. When they're younger, you don't really like you're kind of with you all the time, but now you can like definitely feel the difference. But
Well, having a son in boarding school makes that very apparent.
I bet,
So
yeah.
yeah, it was really nice to have him home and have the whole family together for a couple weeks.
So I want to explore something today that's a little different than what we normally do. Typically I'll throw a topic at you and we kind of talk about it, and sometimes we get into like tactical things. But starting in the new year, I want to, as you know, I haven't really talked publicly, but I'm out doing something new. I'm working on something new, and I'd like to fashion myself as this enlightened human who's done all this work on himself and whatever. And then, I'm like pitching someone something and they're not paying attention and then they say, no, no, thanks. And I notice I go below the line, which sort of means I get into a state of threat or I'm like questioning myself and all these things that I typically maybe coach someone else, like, yeah, you just gotta accept yourself and be okay with it. But all of a sudden, when you're in the game itself, there's real, uh, I don't know, there's real
Challenges.
challenges or like your psyche and your mentality. It's easy to talk about it when you're not necessarily in it every day, but I think as I've kind of been re-entering it, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, and so
Yeah,
I'm more
just like it's easy to say, oh, in order to grow, you got to get outside your comfort zone. But it turns out getting outside your comfort zone is quite uncomfortable. It's like
yeah, and
it
like
feels uncomfortable.
I think for me, I would like to believe that I like would feel different. I think I do than maybe I did 10 years ago, but like I'm still
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. So what I wanted to talk about today, just for fun, maybe rule of threes, like for any entrepreneur listening out there, again, we talk a lot about fear and how do you accept your fear, and we've talked about a
Mm.
bunch of really, and you always give me this feedback like I'm too heady, I'm like in my head, and I'm curious to go, okay, let's spend the next time like when people find themselves in these situations, whether it's fundraising, whether it's challenging employee situations, where they're for an extended period of time, they may be in like a threatening experience, or they may just be in an experience that they're noticing. What are some of the things you would like pretty specifically have them do?
Hmm. Well, first of all, like orientation wise, I mean, you know this, but for audience, like for me and a number of clients I work with, like thinking of life as your presence dojo,
Mm-hmm.
like or a specific aspect of life, like your work, building a fund, a startup. Um, I find really and just to be clear, dojo like karate dojo, right? It's like okay, this is the place where I train to learn to be in a state of presence. Um, with different sparring partners, so to speak, like
Yep.
sparring partners like investor meeting where they ignore me and
Right.
then say no, or someone I really thought was going to say yes says no, or um,
Yep.
and what's what I think is so helpful about that orientation is at least I'll just speak for myself. Like um, I had a conversation with my 16-year-old recently, and he told me. I'm not interested in college. Like, I don't want a 9 to 5 job. I think school is pointless. Like, I want to be a race car driver.
Yep.
Yeah,
Having not ever shown any signs or interest in race car
this
driving.
was like a new, or it wasn't that quick. I was sort of like, okay, like, well, what are you interested in? And
Right.
then, yeah, then he dropped the like, I want to be a race car driver. And I felt a lot of fear. Um, and what I really appreciate about the orientation of like life as a presence dojo is there's some part of me that's also able to be like, oh, cool. Like,
Mm,
this is triggering me. So this is yet another life circumstance that I today can't be fully present,
right.
accept, open, curious, right? I got scared. I noticed I want to control my experience, especially his experience, right? I imagine these futures where he, doesn't do school, doesn't go to college, and has like a
Right.
hard, or crappy life. So I notice all that, but there's enough of me that's like, oh, like this is a formidable sparring partner
Level
in my
four.
presence
Yeah.
dojo, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, so
And just to contrast that, what's the typical way a founder goes into, a sales meeting or a fundraising meeting, or a parent deals with a kid saying something like what your son said?
well, the typical orientation, again, if we start with like orientation is my job is to have life go a certain way.
Yeah.
Right? My job is to make sure, right, control like that my son, whatever, studies hard, like whatever idea I have in my mind of what his path is supposed to be.
Right.
There's actually a good overlap, right? Or my startup child, like
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
ideal
I
path
need
I
to
have
raise
in,
this round, and every time someone says no, it's going to be painful, and they
right?
say
It's a
yes, it's going to be
setback.
happy.
It's actually bad. It's bad because it thwarts me from achieving the thing that I know with certainty is the right thing for me to achieve that will lead to the good life. And because it's thwarted, that means maybe I'll end up with the bad life. And so I really resist it and want to control it and feel a lot of fear. Um, and similarly, well, parenting, I think, is one of the ultimate um, journeys in letting go. But I think startup is too, right? Because you
Yep.
you you get pretty attached, maybe not quite as much as you're attached to your kids' outcomes, but close. And not,
Yeah.
if you don't have kids, it's like the closest you get. You get pretty attached to like this thing must be successful. So let's come back to you, Jesse, right? Like you have a lot of you've achieved a bunch, and so you have kind of an image of yourself, like an identity of yourself as this successful guy who, like, in your mind, of course people are gonna be grateful for the privilege to get to
Get in business
and
with me. Yeah.
yeah, be in business with you and give you money that you believe you're gonna return wonderful return for them. And so when someone says no, there's like a couple layers, right? One is the like, that's not what I thought was going to happen, right? And so in general, it's like, but my mind imagined this thing. And so there's a grief process that we generally resist of
Mm,
like, can you grieve and feel
disappointed.
disappointed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that like it didn't go the way you imagined it would go.
Right.
Um, then there's the like, this doesn't fit with my identity of who I am, so that
Right.
it's threatening to the identity. Like it gets much bigger than just, oh, this one investor said no. It's like maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not really that great. And then I think there's a deeper level. We're still just a bunch of humans, playing startup or playing fun,
Right.
and so we have all our like childhood stuff of like any, lowercase t trauma, any ways you didn't feel fully loved or seen or appreciated, also get triggered by the like essentially the rejection, right? Like
Right.
we're
Right.
social beings, like we are wired to want approval, and we perceive someone saying no to investing in our startup or our company or our fund pretty similarly to like someone rejecting you. Like, I don't want to be
Right.
your friend. I don't want to be
Right.
your partner. And so it just hits us at all these layers. And again, if you're oriented toward, well, life or my startup or my fund is a dojo, I'll keep using that word, a
Yeah.
platform for my growth, then a part of you is like, oh, interesting. This is showing me I still have some unhealed stuff,
Right.
right? Like I think if you fully love yourself unconditionally, you're less likely to get triggered by somebody else who you perceive to not be loving you or to be rejecting you or not
Right.
approving of you.
Right.
So it just shows you, okay, there's still some part of myself that I haven't fully loved or integrated.
Yeah.
Like it's
Let's go.
revealing.
I want to double click a bunch into these. So the dojo thing makes sense, and I think what you said is typically people don't relate to it that way. They relate to it as like survival, and then it's like reactivity. And so you talk, yeah, and you talk to any entrepreneur, and now I'm talking to people who run funds, and they're all just like, it's the worst. Raising money is the worst
Mm.
because you're just, you're literally like, to your point, those three things are happening to you every day,
Yeah.
and they feel existential. But I want to
But
go to
also,
the
you
moment.
kind of have to like, in order to just be putting all the energy into doing the thing, you sort of have to convince yourself it's this like really awesome thing,
Yeah,
right? And so like I remember the feeling of like almost like this being like this little boy with this like beautiful like golden ball, that's like my toy, and I'm like, look at this, and people are like, not that great. And it's like, like it just
yeah, yeah.
it's ouch. Like there's a real ouch to it. Like so, I just want to acknowledge like that dynamic, and I think that's
Yeah, and
very
then
normal and
underneath
human.
that, there, you rationalize it, or you just kind of avoid it, or like. But let's go. I want to go to like if you could be like standing on my shoulder,
Mm.
right? And I'm like, I get out of this pitch with someone, and I notice I feel very upset, and sad, just a little like frustrated, or just maybe discouraged.
Yeah.
I used that word a week or two ago with a friend of mine. He's like, Jesse Pujji is discouraged. I've like never like I don't know that energy in you. And I'm like, that's a little. I'm like, oh, I don't actually know that energy in me either. And I know there's,
Mm.
there's, as you know, there's bigger stuff happening for me right now, and I know that it's part of that. But like in that exact moment where discouragement or all these things show up, and you're standing here and you're live coaching, what's the first thing? What's the first thing you would have me do?
The first thing I would have you do is welcome your sadness.
Mm. And how would I do that?
Mm. Locate it in your body. Be like, okay,
Mm.
yeah, you're disappointed, Jesse. Like, where in your body does that show up?
Okay.
And you would
And what do
say,
people typically do just as an alternative?
oh, uh,
Like what's the failure pattern as we call it here, huh?
distract themselves,
Right. So
justify
maybe
or
jumping on and reaching out to five other potential investors.
maybe, or having a drink or smoking a joint or watching, TV, or yeah, or jumping into work and just like over functioning just to kind of not feel it, and make themselves feel better. Sometimes there's defensive patterns like screw those guys, those idiots, like they don't know, or I'll show them, right? Like the chip on the
Hmm.
shoulder. So there's all sorts of defense mechanisms
Right.
that typically kick in to avoid feeling the sadness and frankly the fear,
Yep.
because there's sadness, but there's also like, oh, I thought this was going to go well, and then there maybe would be like an upward spiral of like, and
Yep.
now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and I mean, this is the entrepreneur roller coaster. Is the
Right.
like one moment I think it's all going to be up and to the right, and I'm going to IPO for billions of dollars, and then literally the next moment, it's like, oh, this I'm just going to fail, and
Yeah, I'm
what
wasting my time.
I'm
That's a big
wasting
one
my
for me.
time. I'm going
I
to
almost feel like the
be
first
ashamed.
thing, the one you said, I almost think the first thing is actually probably just to slow down and actually build some awareness over how you've been affected by, because I think old me and a lot of people I interact with, I'm like,
Yeah.
you may say, are you feeling sad? They're like, I'm not sad. No, I'm like, and they don't even realize what's taken place because the machine in their system is already, you know
Doing its defensive pattern.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, one of the most simple ways to think about whether you're likely in a defense pattern is if you're in your head, not your body.
yeah,
And I mean, I spent decades like in my, just basically like rationalize that, like in my head, not really feeling what was in my body, at least not consciously. So yeah, I like what you said. Like, hold on, like your mind is going to be generating all sorts of thoughts to like distract you or strategize or try to figure it out or rationalize it. So can you like shift your attention down from your head to your body, and even just
right.
like you said, ask oh, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, as a practice, maybe I'm trying to get to, like, even just for myself,
Yeah,
like after meetings, like have 15 minutes of just not that you'll spend the whole 5 minutes, you'll get 5 minutes, but schedule 15 minutes in your calendar so that
yeah.
of in the 15 you can get 3 minutes even, or five, of just I'm gonna like just center myself
Be
and like
be with myself.
be with
Yeah,
myself, and
yeah.
then see, and I notice what's coming up, and then the next thing is, okay, maybe sadness showed up, or fear, or something else.
Yeah, I'm thinking about resilience, and I
Hmm.
just saw something. I don't know. It's called like the resilient entrepreneur or something. But like the typical pattern, what you call failure pattern, is just go right to the next meeting.
Yep.
And I think what happens is all that emotion just gets bottled up, and then it kind of leaks out in all these unhealthy ways. So I actually think if you want to be more resilient, right? Like especially if you're, well, you were just in New York, had like back-to-back meetings, right? Like that's
That's what I'm
tricky
thinking
because
about. Yeah.
yeah, if you have to go right from a rejection, especially when you thought they were going to say it, right into the next meeting, like that's you set yourself up for a pretty big challenge.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with it, but like it's likely going to be more challenging than if you gave yourself time to like have a bit of a reset.
Yeah.
And the the sort of lie that our minds tell us like no, don't feel right now because then you're screwed. Like if you let yourself feel, then you're just going to
Yeah.
go down and you're going to be like a puddle. Like you need to be strong and tough so you can get to your next meeting. From my experience, like if you really feel the feeling all the way through to completion, it doesn't take that long and actually helps you reset and get present again for your next meeting.
Yeah. I love that.
And I've been fond, especially this past year, of saying like a feeling is worth a thousand thoughts.
I love that.
Pictures worth a thousand words. Like
Yeah.
it's been especially like a aha for me because I spent years coaching thoughts, and I don't
Right.
want to dismiss that. Like there's value in that. Cognitive behavioral therapy
Stories.
is,
Yeah. Beliefs.
yeah, like challenging the stories your mind makes up, seeing through that. Like all of that is very useful. And what I've been learning, especially over the last year or so, is that often the entire thought pattern is really just a strategy to avoid feeling something.
Right.
And if you, again, bring your attention down to your body where the feelings actually live, notice the sensations in your body, allow them versus what we usually do, which is like, fuck, I don't want to feel that. No, go away, sadness. Like I need to
Right.
be tough. Go away. Just fully allow it to move through you, right? It's like waves. Um, it's actually amazing how like entire patterns of thought can just
Disappear.
dissolve because they're all
Yeah, and
really
it's I
just a
think the
way to
most
avoid
the
feeling.
most touchstone for most people, and whenever I explain this stuff, is like it's just with your spouse or significant other, where like you can be in the most heated argument ever about something, and literally if the energy or the emotion feels or changes, or someone cries, or someone doesn't like,
Mm,
you could literally go from to like cuddling with that, like
mm.
the whole thought pattern. You're like, what were we? I don't even remember what it
Yeah.
was. You were just so the feeling was so strong, and it was just looping in your
Because,
brain.
right, because the real issue is essentially, am I feeling loved or not?
Right.
Right? Like,
Or I'm
in
feeling
some way,
something I'm
it's,
not willing. Yeah, I'm not willing to feel. You know, the other thing I've noticed that's interesting. It's actually fun now. Like I'm like kind of actually thinking about what I've been experiencing the last few weeks. In New York, you mentioned I had like eight meetings, right? Running around New York City in between the meetings, which is not a particularly calming
mm,
experience. And you know that, have you heard this? Like the kids, when you have kids, especially younger kids, they have, I forget what they call it. It's like post school letdown syndrome, or post like
I
basically
hadn't heard of
it's
it.
some dumb name for the idea that kids come home and they're grumpy after school, and they're much more prone to throwing tantrums or fits, especially when they're 4 or 5, like they're younger. And the
Mm.
reason that the scientists or whatever have determined is, well, at school they're like on the whole day,
Ah, yes. Yeah.
and so the second then they come home, they're like,
I can let my guard
I
down and just be a little jerk.
and it's interesting because when I'm realizing if I'm not taking that time in between meetings, I basically am like on, and then I realize I've gotten to the end of the days, and I'm like, woo, like I am really cashed. And even then, like thinking about what happened last week when we were talking about it, is like I then had like another thing, and I flew somewhere, and then I was like
Mm.
real, and it really like it almost was like a letdown, a much bigger letdown, not because of that in particular meeting, but because I had been avoiding it all week basically, or I hadn't been doing the reset button.
Yeah. Pretty much everything in nature works in cycles, right? It's like the
Yeah,
sun comes and go, we revolve around the sun, we rotate, like everything is in cycles. And for some reason, we humans try to just ignore that and we burn ourselves out, right? It's like, okay, if you're going to exert a ton, be on exert a lot of energy, like, yeah, you need to create some space to process and come back down before you go up again. And when we try to just like push linearly, yeah, that's what often leads to
Yeah. All
burnout
right.
or just
So
crashing.
you slow down. You notice what you're feeling. Now let's go back. You feel sadness. You locate it in your body.
Yeah.
Then what?
If you're schooled in conscious leadership, I'd ask you, are you above or below the line around
Hmm.
this meeting you just had?
Probably
And
below.
you'd probably say below. And then I'd
And
say,
it's
can you
worth
accept?
noting, I think that even when the meeting goes well and the person committed, gave you money, you're probably still below the line.
You might be.
Or you just because it went well doesn't mean that you're below,
Right.
above or below, right?
Yeah, you might be attached to that. And yeah, you can have like
You're at the
conditional
effect of
joy.
something outside of yourself.
Yes. Um, yeah, I will say it is easier to accept reality as it is when it's going the way you want it to go.
Yeah, exactly.
um, and like to your point, earlier, it is more challenging. Like that's why during fundraising, people go below the line more. Of course, it's more challenging when there's high stakes things that don't go the way you want. Um, so in some way, I'm sort of outlining the conscious leadership shift process, but I'll weave in some other stuff. So that process is, can you accept yourself for being below the line, which is basically just in some way it's like, can you just allow yourself to be human,
Hmm.
right? And acknowledge that human beings are wired to perceive threat, and when things that matter to you don't go the way you thought, it's very common to perceive it as threatening and to be scared and to resist it and wish it hadn't happened that way. Like that's just so normal. And I
Right.
think in some way, you said this at the beginning of the episode, like the more work you've done, sometimes the less accepting you are of your humanity. And
Yeah.
I resonate with this too. It's like, oh my God, I've done all this work and still, one investor says no, and I'm like, I'm
I'm in a
all in
tailspin. Yeah.
reactive and below the line is like, no, it's not still. It's just right now in this moment, you are. That's what you're
Right.
experiencing. And so, in some way, it, there's a trap of like being below the line about being below the line. It's like
Hmm.
I shouldn't be in a reactive mode, or I shouldn't be in a state of threat. So again, the second step is some version of, can you just accept yourself for being exactly where you are, feeling what you're feeling.
Right.
Um,
But and I think
eh,
most people would go, "Oh yeah, I am feeling a little bummed about that." No, don't feel bummed. You got 5 more meetings next week. Like you wouldn't say it's okay to feel bummed. You would start like at least I would, or
yeah.
like have like, oh no, don't, and then at least for me, just to give it voice, like it, then I start feeling really stuck
Mm,
because I haven't felt the feeling
yeah.
because I'm just resisting it. Like and then that brings me back into my head, and then I'm like back in my head, and I'm like, okay, maybe we need to change something. Maybe like and you're like solving all these things just because for me at least, especially sadness, I'm like I wasn't willing to just be like, oh man, poor me, poor that sucks. That I'm feeling this or whatever. I'm feeling this way.
Yeah. I'm disappointed. Yeah, that's super common that we have it. Most people believe that like, oh, it's good to feel joy and excitement, and it's bad to feel sad or scared or angry. So when those feelings arise, we just find a way to kind of paper over them or rationalize them or push through or something like that. And it's pretty counterintuitive, again, I think for a lot of people that like that it's, just like vulnerability is strength, like it's a cliche, but a lot of people are like, is it really, or do I just look like a wimp? And
Right, right,
um, it is really, and it takes actually experiencing it. Like I've seen, people, leaders in a group, really say something vulnerable, and how it, how much people appreciate and respect, the courage that took, et cetera. So in kind of a similar way, it takes maybe courage to like feel the feelings that we typically want to push away.
right.
It certainly takes intentionality, because most of us by default are like, this is
Yeah,
bad. I need to fundraise. I can't
got
feel
to
this right
get
now.
rid of this. Yeah,
Yeah, I got to push through. I got to move through. And the irony is, yeah, like if you just really give it, like you said, even just a few minutes of like, oh fuck, I'm really disappointed. Like, like it'll move through you more quickly. And then, the place I might go next, essentially, the next questions: are you willing to shift from a state of threat to a state of presence, or from below the line to above the line? And like the 15 commitments of conscious leadership offer sort of guidance about how you might do that. But I would say the most common path that I would go would be, I'd help you look at what stories is your mind making up based on what just happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to play, like,
Yeah,
what
like
stories was
oh,
your
I'm
mind
doing
making
this
it?
wrong,
Right.
or that person doesn't like me,
Mm.
or is not behind me, or this is gonna be harder than I thought. I don't want to be doing this. Those are common ones for me.
Yeah, so there's sort of two flavors. One is about the thing that just happened. I screwed it up. I did it wrong. They
Yeah.
don't like me. And then the other is you tend to extrapolate or project and make up stories about the future of like what's going to happen now, right? And you like that's where the big emotional swing comes from. You were living into imagining this bright future where everyone said yes and it was so easy and it just all happened. And then you switch to like, oh no, everyone's going to say no, right? It's just we generalize, right?
Yep.
This one thing that happened into, yeah, like it's always going to be that way. And, I forget if we talked about this before. I was like, I don't know, over a decade ago, I read Martin Seligman's Learned Optimism book.
Hmm.
He was like the father of positive psychology. And he had this really simple distinction. I'll try to remember it, which was like for optimists, that's what he labels it. When setbacks happen, optimists tend to label the setback as temporary and specific.
Hmm.
So temporary, right? Like, okay, this one investor said no, and
Yep.
specific, like, okay, it's just this. Um, and pessimists tend to label that same exact experience as permanent and pervasive.
Hmm.
So let me be even more clear about it. So the specific part is like, oh, I didn't do well in that meeting. And the temporary is like, okay, this particular investor said no.
Right.
But permanent and pervasive is like, oh God, all investors are going to say no
Right.
because I suck at fundraising. So it's like permanent, it's always going to be this way, and pervasive
Yeah.
because it means something fundamental about me. And I thought that
Yeah,
was
that's a
just
good one.
such a
Mine is
like,
not mine. By the way, well, where my head went is like all kinds of other interesting. Like, I have both in me. I have my inner
yeah, of
optimist, my inner
course.
pessimist, and like, but my inner pessimist is he knows I'm still really good at pitching, so it's never anything I did wrong in the pitch. I mean, you can always be better to pitch, but it's always like I shouldn't be doing this. This is not a good use. Like, why am I spending my time on this? Which I think, for especially when you had some success, and I'm like, you're like, for whatever reason, that's the pessimist story that pervades when I'm like in that.
Yeah, it's a good defense mechanism, right? It's like I'm above this. I
It's
I don't
beautiful,
even want
yeah,
to do this anyway. Why am I doing this? Because your system wants to avoid feeling those feelings,
totally,
and it's basically trying to get you to stop doing the thing that's, putting um, putting that at risk, or creating
yeah.
risk.
Okay, look at the stories. What else is in this process?
Um, I This one's nuanced. I love the exercise of like, are you willing to take your 100% responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for how that went?
Yep.
And
I think
the
actually just let's pause on that one for a second because I think
sure.
that one has been helpful for me because oftentimes when I find myself being disappointed about something in my life, whether it's something I expected from my wife or kids, or whether it's in these pitch meetings, it's like it it's a good reality check because usually I came in with an expectation that I was not conscious of in the moment,
Yeah.
and like we talked about meditating after the meeting or something and presencing, but even before a conversation, just like, are you truly open to whatever is about to happen, or like, is whatever is about to happen going to be for your highest and best good? Can you truly? Because I think I found myself in this process of like, oh yeah, it's so subtle, and I don't even know that this is happening. Where I'm like, oh yeah, this is this is a big one. This is going to be a good one. This is, and honestly, for me at least, that's way more responsible usually for my letdown than anything else that happens. Because I'm resilient. I've lived through a lot. I've seen a lot, but it's almost always these like very, very small moments of high expectations that then,
Yeah, which what I don't want people to take away from that, and some people tend to, is don't have high expectations.
right.
I'm a dreamer. I love dreaming. I love believing in my clients' dreams and encouraging them to dream. So the trick is not to not have high expectations, is to not be attached to those high
Right.
expectations.
Right.
And it's really subtle and nuanced, but you can feel the difference of like I can like, oh, I imagine them saying yes. I'm so
Yeah, that'd be
excited about it,
awesome.
but I'm not like attached to being right that that's what should happen. And I'm genuinely like open and curious, like, okay, if they say no, how could that be just as good or
Right.
better, right? And it's kind of like holding a paradox of like I really want it to happen, and I don't know for sure that that's what should happen. So it's
Yeah.
like you can hold it lightly. Like I
Yeah, I've
think
heard
about
some
that a
people say
lot.
like the outcome, like it's a helpful frame of like you have the right to the like to your dream and to the conversation. You can desire whatever you want. You
Totally.
have no right to the outcome. That's just
Right. You're not entitled to that happening,
yeah. And when you're finding attached to the
and
outcome, then
most
it's
things you
a
can't actually control whether it happens.
yeah. And incidentally, like I find myself at least, especially in pitching, when I'm getting attached to outcomes, I'm like worse. Like I'm less dynamic. I'm less flexible. Like I just end up finding myself in a different place. So yeah, I think the responsibility thing is helpful again, especially to like how you created the conditions for your upset. And for me, that's a really good one. Um,
Yeah,
what
there's
things
two
are you learning?
layers. Let's talk about responsibility for a second, because there's
Sure.
two layers to it. One is the how did I create this experience for myself of like being disappointed, feeling this way. And that's exactly what you said, maybe like attachment to the outcome. By the way, there's this other paradox, which we've talked about, I think, which is the less attached you are to the outcome, the easier it is to create, because you just show up with a lot more fluidity when you're not attached.
Totally.
And that's a real challenge, for a lot of founders and it's like, oh, but I really want to raise the money, and um, so it takes real intentionality and real, um, I guess, courage. Like I think there's this fear that if I let go of attachment, then I won't be as motivated and I won't be as driven and I won't drive toward it, and I'll be apathetic, which is not it's not true from my experience. So layer one is like, how did I create my experience? Okay, I had this expectation, I got attached to it, and then life didn't go, it didn't meet my expectation, right? The meeting didn't go the way I pictured it. And so again, sadness is the energy of letting go. There's no problem. It's just there's a process of letting go of that expectation so that you can be with reality as it is. Like
Right.
that's what we mean by coming back into a state of presence. And then there's just the like, well, I wanted them to say yes and they said no. So how curious can I be about like what might I have done differently that might have had them say yes, if
Yeah.
anything? And the nuance here is people tend to blame themselves and say they're taking responsibility
Hmm.
because they still are believing that it's bad that the investor said no. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're like, they're trying to take responsibility, but really they're just like, what did I do wrong? There's like a feeling of like, you screwed up. Now we need to figure out what you screwed up, as opposed to just like, oh, I wanted them to say yes and they said no. Like, I wonder how
Yeah.
I might have contributed to that happening.
Yep. Yeah, that really resonates. And I think the like there was some order of ops we're kind of talking about, right? It's like like still yourself down, sense what you might be feeling, actually feel the feeling, start to look for ways that your stories are sort of, maybe not true, this responsibility piece. And then and only then can you get curious about what you could have learned or done differently. And the reason I'm saying this, by the way, is for myself, really. Because what I do is before I get to even one level down, I'm like, okay, reflect, feedback. What could we have done differently? What are we learning? Maybe the format's not right. Maybe we have to change the way this is structured. Like, And I find myself in that pattern a ton. Which
Mm.
is I don't even get to this whole bottom. Like I don't feel I'm just like, ooh, let me adjust let me try to find the answer. And I think in sales in particular, it can get very tempting to keep, it is good in sales to like iterate, obviously, but I think when you're iterating from that place, you can end up in very bizarre situations or just situations where you're not really learning the thing you need to learn.
Mm. Yeah, it's like a reactive pattern, is what I hear you saying.
Right.
It's just like, oh, I don't want to feel this. Okay, I gotta just figure out what to do so I never feel this again. And the insights you have are, I think what I'm hearing, are not nearly as useful or rich as when you're shift to a state of presence and you're truly curious about, what you could have done differently.
Yeah, I think it's typically it's when you start spinning essentially. Like you're like,
Mm.
well, I could do this differently, blah, but I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead, and like blah 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 blah. And then at least for me, you're not really you're just playing this game with yourself, and you're not actually figuring out the thing that you're hearing. And the interesting thing about selling in general is, man, selling is such an amazing source of feedback. Whether it's selling to companies and enterprise, whether it's fundraising, like it's a very rich source of information that oftentimes I think we don't take advantage of because we just get so stuck in that place.
Yeah, one thought I just had when you mentioned selling is like there's sort of more obvious insights that might come, like, oh, this, the way we pitched it, wasn't as clear, or we should have said this or that. But then there's like, if you really get curious, you might start asking things like, well, what is even my relationship to fundraising?
Mm.
Right? Like, fundraising is, hard
Means
and
to an end, yeah,
scary, or yeah, or investors are pariahs, but it's like what's it called, like a necessary evil. And
yeah,
those mindsets, even before any strategy, any way you communicate, will affect how you show up and how it
totally.
goes. So that's what I like about like the deeper curiosity that I just did this retreat in Sun Valley, and we did an exercise around that, like fundraising is dot dot dot, hiring is, building a startup is, and like really had people reflect,
Mm.
like what is my like knee jerk, like just first thing that comes to mind, what are my beliefs about these different aspects of building the company, and how are those beliefs impacting how I show up and how I perform. And it was really insightful for people to realize just how much those beliefs were shaping their experience. And
Yeah,
because we're on the topic of fundraising, one of the participants was like, oh, that's interesting, I love sales and I hate fundraising. And we're like, oh, that's it. Like I love sales because I'm like giving, this buyer like an opportunity to like get real
yeah,
something they
yeah.
really value. And we're like, well, how is that different from fundraising? And they're like, oh, wow, yeah, I guess it could be that too. And there's a way in which if you think of it more that way, it's like, okay, like if a buyer doesn't buy because it's not a good fit, it's not, sometimes we take that personally too, but it's a little easier to be like, oh yeah, that it's just not a good fit, right? Or like,
Yeah.
again, like all these metaphors, some
Well,
people
it's
relate to
almost
them
like
the
when
same way.
fundraising has just a higher chance that you make it about yourself, basically,
Yeah.
and
I
and
mean,
you use
people do with sales too, but like
right.
for whatever reason, like if you're selling the whole company, not, you know what I mean? Like you're selling like
Yeah, the
a
product
stake
or
in
the
the
service.
company.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels more like, yeah, more
personal.
personal.
The the idea of the dojo. How do you
Mm.
how do you remind yourself of that? Or how do you keep it present? Because again, these conversations on a podcast on Friday afternoon are great.
Yeah.
Next week you got to go back in and
So, um, I really resonate with the idea of running lots of experiments.
mhm.
And so instead of like, oh, there's one answer, like I invite people like to run a number of experiments around your question, like how do I keep this front of mind?
Mhm.
So there's tons of structures that we can use. Here's what I'd say. I would not rely on your memory.
Right.
right? It's like the time where you most need to remember it is usually the time where it's least accessible in your memory. So, whether it's a post-it note on your laptop
Yeah.
or a printout that you keep, on your desk, or a little statue of, like, I have a little Buddha statue I'm looking at, and like,
Yeah.
or like something like an external cue, a calendar reminder, an app reminder. Um, some people like set up like a Google sheet and
Yeah. Once
kind of.
upon a time, you had me keep index cards in my back pocket and pull them out before a meeting. Maybe I'll try that again.
That's a great
Um,
example, right? Like some physical structure or some digital structure that you don't have to rely on your memory. Like it's going to pop up or you're going to see it. And I do, the good news is there is a compounding effect to practice. So I do find, like they say, right? You do something for, 30 to 60 days in a row, it becomes more of a habit. So I have found, and many, many, founders I've worked with have found that over time, if you practice paying attention to, where am I, um, and which is really like the domino habit, right? Like first thing is just to notice, and then there's like
Yep.
the whole dominoes of like shifting. Um, Over time, yeah, it gets easier. Like it becomes more habitual for to put attention on that.
Yeah. Two
Um,
two that I've been playing with medium degrees of success. One is this, that there's like the Ram Dass line, and this too, where he kind of says no matter what you're experiencing, just like it's part of the universe or God, like, and this too, and like whatever it is. That's been one. And then another one that I've been playing with
mm,
has been like, this
mm,
is kind of a crazy one, but it's like if you imagine like God, universe, you pick your source, whatever, like existence, pick your favorite word. um I'm like, I have this idea of this thing I want to do, and every meeting I take is in someone, like, it's like God being like, well, what about, don't, like, you should, it's like a piece of feedback to shape the idea to make it better, or to like make it more aligned to me actually, which a lot of the conversations I've been having, they sometimes feel like alignment conversations, not yes or
mm,
no feedback conversations.
mm.
So I don't know, those, I'm not, it's
Almost like
been,
the universe is mirroring. I was gonna say,
it's
like
like
the
each
universe
person is
is
a different,
mirroring
it's
back
the
to
same
you.
person just giving me different feedback and guiding me along a path for where this is ultimately ought to be and end up. um and because a lot of conversations I've had have been rich in like feedback in some sense of like, well, what about this way, have you thought about it this way or whatever. So anyway, those have just been two I've been trying.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is the less attached you are to the outcome, probably the more interesting information you'll get, right? Like
Totally.
you'll be more open to hear someone give you feedback, or you'd be more curious, like genuinely curious about like, oh, it's so you're saying no, what makes it not a fit for you, right? Versus,
Yeah.
if you're just like, oh shit, you're kind of
Yeah,
probably
I've
not
noticed that,
listening to.
and especially like my thing I'm working on is like very Midwest centric, and like I've noticed when I'm saying kind of in a good zone, someone's like, "Oh, let me actually introduce you. This person will be really good because they'll care a lot about this. I don't care about this, but that person will care." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. If I do this constantly, and I keep getting three intros to people who are more likely to care about it, like
Yeah.
this whole process is going to go back, you know." And in New York, that happened quite a few times, and like it's like super interesting that there's a lot of big dogs who are from the Midwest or from St. Louis actually in particular, and it's like, oh yeah, those are conversations will be more fruitful. So
The,
um,
I don't want to tell the whole like parable of the Chinese farmer, but I really like the look it up if you're interested. But I really like the conclusion of it, which is sort of like good news, bad news, who knows, right? That I find that really helpful because my mind just wants to label like, oh, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, that's good.
yep,
But if I'm like, is it, would it have been better if they invested? Like maybe, like you said, maybe this intro will be more valuable, or maybe they would have been a pain in my ass, or like just to hold much more lightly my mind's idea of what's good and bad so that I can be more in flow with just life as it is.
yeah,
Um,
it's a great
by the
place
way,
to end.
there's something I skipped over that's like the simplest of all of this, which is just take a deep breath.
Mm,
right? And even more so would be like 4x4 breathing, where you breathe
Right.
in for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds. You do that 4 times. It's about a 30-second reset. Sometimes just that, like maybe you still have back-to-back meetings. Maybe you don't have the 15 minutes in between. Even just the difference of like starting, or giving yourself 30 seconds between every meeting, take a few deep breaths will make like a huge difference. And that also could be a trigger to then, okay, what am I feeling?
Right.
Right. So,
Notice.
I feel remiss if I didn't come back to like the
Yeah, that's a
most
perfect.
basic of
Let's
shift moves. It's
the
just
simplicity on the other
take a
side
deep
of
breath.
complexity. Just
Just take
breathe,
some deep
baby.
breaths.
Just
Just
notice your
breathe.
breath and keep breathing.
Just breathe.
All right, let's end it there.
All right. Till next
Thank you,
time.
Dave. This was a great sesh.
Thank you.
Bye.